base is twined, then my next step is I need to measure these outside spoke lengths, and I need to upset my base. So the first thing I need to do is wet my materials, because we know we always have to work with wet materials. So I'm gonna go ahead and soak it in the water just for about 10 seconds. Now that my base is wet, I'm gonna go ahead and, like I said, measure these outside spoke lengths. That means all of the spokes that are sticking out from the sides of the base I twined. When I start to measure, I want to measure from the perimeter. The perimeter is also where I was twining. So, from the twine, starting at my 0 line, I'm gonna measure out to 7.5 inches. So I know for my tall basket, all of my outer spokes need to be 7.5 inches. Now, I can see here that this is much longer than 7.5 inches. So, to make it shorter, I'm gonna pull from the opposite side, and that's going to make my spoke shorter. So I'm just gonna pull it until I get to 7.5. And once I'm there, and I know my middle spoke is 7.5 inches here, I can take off my clips so I can move the others. And I can just simply adjust the other 2 spokes to match that measured spoke in the center. Of course, I always want to just double check my work, measuring from the perimeter out, make sure I'm at 7.5. I can move that in just a little. And 7.5. Now that I have one side done, I'm gonna go ahead and switch and do my other sides. So again, starting from my 0 line at the perimeter, I measure out, and this spoke is much longer than 7.5. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull from the opposite side until I get to 7.5. I can go ahead and just pull the others to match it. Lining them all up. And of course, going back with our ruler and double checking. So, looks like those 2 sides are 7.5 inches. And then the other 2 sides. Great. So, now that I have all of my outer spokes measured, it's time to upset. So if your base has dried a little bit while measuring, you can go ahead and dunk it in the water again, just to make sure it's nice and wet. The next step is upsetting. And first thing we do is just bend these outer spokes right at our perimeter. So I'm gonna go ahead and bend it over and press it down. And we wanna go 1 spoke at a time to make sure it's very close to our perimeter, because if we bend it further away from our perimeter, it's gonna make our base much larger than what we measured. All right, now that I've bent all my spokes at the perimeter, it's time to upset. So I'm going to grab 2 from one side and 2 from the other. And when I put them together, I'm gonna make sure that they're hugging each other like this, and they're not facing each other, creating like an onion shape. We want them to be flat against each other. Now that we have one side, 2 from one side and 2 from the other, the next side's gonna be 1 and 3. Same thing, we want to make sure they're all facing the same direction. And go ahead and just clip that up. Now onto the next corner. 2 from one side and 2 from the other. Then flip it up. And my last side, 1 and 3. Making sure they're all facing in the same direction. And clip. So now that I have my base, or my upset, I'm ready to start weaving in my weavers and beginning to build my basket.
Okay, now we're ready to measure and upset the base of our short basket. But first, I'm gonna soak it for about 10 seconds before I go any further. Okay, so now we have our soaked short basket base. I'm gonna go ahead and remove the clips. And I need to make sure that all the spokes outside of the perimeter of the base of my basket on all 4 sides are all 5.5 inches long. So I'm gonna go ahead and measure with my ruler from the very perimeter of the base of my basket. I'm gonna adjust by pulling my spoke in the opposite direction if it's a little bit too long. Okay, and now I can make sure that all of my spokes on this side line up to this spoke that has been correctly measured. And I'm just gently tugging in the opposite direction, not pulling too hard, but slow and steady tugs on the spokes. Okay, and straighten them out after you make them all even. Okay, so we'll just double check. Yep, 5.5 inches from the base, perimeter's base, to the end of the spoke. Okay, now I can work on the other side. Side looks like it's gonna be a little bit longer than 5.5 inches. Okay, about 7 inches. I'm gonna go ahead and tug it the opposite direction. Now about 5.5 inches there. And just like I did with this side, I can repeat the process of making sure all of these spokes that are unmeasured match the measured spoke, and I'll go back and double check. Straightening them out if they get a little crooked. And then come back in with a double check with the ruler. 5.5 inches from the perimeter of the base of the basket. All right, so now I've measured and made all of my spokes match up. I'm gonna go ahead and soak it a couple more seconds before we upset the base. All right, so when you're ready to upset the base, you are going to be taking your spokes first and folding them all over on each other. And go ahead and press hard on the bending area of the spoke. And once again, you want to fold it right on the perimeter of the base. All right, all of our spokes have been upset. Now it's time to clip them, and the clipping will hold them all upright. So on my first corner, I'm going to take 2 from one side. Doesn't matter what corner you start on. 2 from one side, and 3 from the next side. And I want to make sure they all lie flat on top of each other, like this, not facing inward, so where it looks like an onion. You want them to all be flat on each other, and go ahead and clip the very top. You want them to be clipped so they will not fall out. Okay, 2 and 3. On this side, repeat the same count, 2 and 3. Making sure that they're all flat on top of each other. Clip at the top, held in place. 2 and 3. Clip. 2 and 3. Clip. Now our short basket has been measured, upset, and clipped, and we're ready for the next step.